Welcome to Data Fest Africa 2024, day 3. All right, so we have an amazing lineup, and it's about AI startups. We have an interesting mix here of angel investors, VCs, and we also have a co-founder here. And the whole idea is just to get us to, understand how startups should run. So look at that from the co-founder's perspective. It will also be helpful to understand how to position yourself as an AI startup, for funding. So what are some of the things you should look out for? What are certain things you should put in place and do? And more importantly, what are some of the problems, you should even be solving using AI? And so I'm just going to start with Olumide. And you have a very interesting, your experience is quite interesting because on one hand, you're the co-founder of Blue Chip, which is a data and AI company, one of the respected ones in the country. On another hand, you're also an angel investor / VC. And so my question for you would be, what are some of the things you look out for, right, when it comes to investing in an AI startup? What are the factors you look out for?
I think, and thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here today. Good morning, House. I think it's interesting when people, the same thing, and I'm sure Iyin would agree largely as other investors on the table would. The bottom line is an AI startup, a conventional startup, I'm still going to look out for the same things first. Yes, I might ask further questions based on subject matter expertise, but I'm still going to look out for the same things first. So the same key things remain true, and the first thing remains the team, right? Who is building this? What subject matter expertise does the founder have? What different worldview does the founder have in trying to build out this problem? So sometimes you find out that you made a founder and you're asking, why do you want to build this, right? So it starts with the why to the founder. Why are you trying to solve this problem? And then when you interrogate the why, you then get to see some of the key things that that's driving the founder or the team to build in this category. So for me, it starts from the team. What risk has this founder taken on themselves before they ask me to take a risk on them? What subject expertise does this founder have? What unique insights in terms of thought process does this founder have in building this? The second thing we then start discussing is it viable, right? There are certain key, and I mean, you engage with a lot of technical founders, and it's about technical prowess, right? Oh, I've built this startup that can do this, and so what? You have built it for your pocket now. What does it do, and who's going to pay for it, right? So the fact that it solves a problem for one doesn't mean that it will solve a problem for many, and you can build a business out of it. So with an AI startup, it's still the same critical things that we would look out for, but we are then starting to see how are you using AI for scale, right? And how does AI then accelerate whatever you're building to achieve scale quicker? So it's still the same key things around the market, the team, and how deep and the product that they're building.
All right, thank you very much, Olumide. Very, very, very insightful. So the team and the market, basically, in summary. All right, so I'll pose the next question to Iyin. So you've invested in quite a number of startups, and I noticed that recently you started investing in AI startups actually through Accelerate Africa. And one of the other things I've also noticed you talk about is the types of problems we should even be solving with technology, right? So from where you sit, what type of problems are ripe for artificial intelligence to solve in the country today or in Africa today?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ayo, for
for that question, and pleasure to be here today. Um, so I'm very particular these days about the problems that we spend our time solving because I find that one of the mistakes we made in the last wave was maybe we spent a bit too much time on fintech. Um, and the reality is that we probably need more young people dealing with real problems as opposed to trying to over financialize our country. Um, for me, I'm very particular about basic problems. So I spend a lot of time thinking about three things. I think a lot about food. Food is 85% of. Why is everybody laughing? Wait. Which one do you want, food or fintech? Thank you. So I think a lot about food, right? Food is 85% of the average Nigerian spend. And so we don't actually think a lot about how we get our food and why food keeps becoming more and more expensive. So our approach to the problem has been to focus first on cloud kitchens. So we're significant shareholders in both Food Court and Eden Life, which between both of them do roughly about 3,000 meals a day and have a capacity for up to 25,000 meals a day. So I think a lot about food, right? I think a lot about along the same value chain. I also think a lot about agriculture because food, if the way I can get food to you for 2,500 a plate is if I can get the food, the raw materials for much cheaper. So I'm very excited about. I've not really done much yet, but I'm actually talking to. I'm actually looking at a startup that wants to recruit young people that want to move to run farms, mechanized farms. So they'll go into an Antella for mechanized commercial farmers. And I have a lot of rich people like Olumide that have expanse of land in their village that they are not using. So I'm telling them that, look, if you want to run for governor, give me those lands. Let me put a young person there. They won't export the food and they'll sell food for cheap in your village and put your name on the packaging. And it's working.
Done.
Oh, Davi? Good. See my pitch now. Yes, I'll follow up. So I'm thinking a lot about that as well. Second thing I think a lot about, and again, okay, where is AI in all of that, right? So mechanized farming and precision agriculture is the future, right? Because we obviously we can't move from, using hoe and cutlass. Even tractor self, is different. So now we have to be talking about drones. We have to be talking about being able to make sure we can monitor the sensors in the ground, make sure the crops have enough nutrients, etc., etc. So that's what I'm thinking about. Energy is the second thing I think a lot about. I feel like we've been generally like a wasteful society when it comes to energy. And thankfully, now that the government has removed subsidy, a lot of these SUVs can make way for electric cars. Not necessarily because we love the environment, but because it's cheaper energy. But where does AI come into that? I'm talking to a startup that's building a new kind of smart meter that basically can control your electricity usage. If you're on band A, you're probably paying easily between 300 to 400 naira per kilowatt hour. How do I optimize your band A usage, right? So that you can have a battery when you're not in the house, you can just power the fridge instead of using expensive band A power. It recharges your battery. So it just kind of optimizes your bill so that you can lower your energy. Then I think a lot about jobs. So food, energy, and jobs. And for jobs, I mean, there's a lot of people that are thinking about AI as like, I want to sell a product, customer service. They are nice applications, and I've invested in some of them. But what I'm really excited about with AI when it comes to jobs is, one, how people can get into how can we make more Africans the human in the loop?
So when you think about reinforced learning with human feedback, how do you make sure that it's an African that is the person that is doing that? And then how do you scale those types of platforms? The second thing I'm thinking about is how do you use AI to identify exceptional talent? So, we worked with AfriScouts. AfriScouts is a platform that allows local coaches to use video and automatically creates using AI and computer vision a LinkedIn profile with reels of every player on the field. And then we're able to layer on statistics from successful football players and use that statistics to overlay over this so that we can build what we call perfect tryout teams. So when a coach comes to Nigeria, you have a perfect tryout team, and that tryout team is more likely to be able to get into a proper league or be exported and all of that. So I think a lot about food, energy, and jobs.
All right, thank you very much. So food, energy, and jobs. If you're thinking about starting something or solving a problem, you can look into those areas. All right, so John, now to you. So you're a co-founder of Carousel, and which is a YC-backed insurance startup. And I think for you to be from where you sit, what are some of the challenges that you faced building and scaling Carousel?
Great. First, thanks for having me here. It's an honor. So what are some of the challenges? I mean, the challenges stroke. There are plenty. So I have to try to pick some. Okay? And let's see. So I'll say one of them, the very common thing you all mostly are familiar with is talent. And I'm going to be very specific in the direction of if you're trying to build an AI startup, right? There's some kind of talents that you need, especially depending on what you want to build. And you could find your way around this, try to, hire, train, even learn yourself what needs to be done, right? But you just need to be aware that if you're going to build something massive, you're going to need the best people on your team, right? Most times what they tell you is the company is the people. It's not necessarily just the product or what you're building. The people make the company. So the quality of people on your team will determine almost everything that happens with your startup. So building the right team, finding the right people to join your team, being able to have the right culture, having the people that actually fit the kind of culture you want is one challenge that almost every startup founder is going to face. We have faced that, and we think we have scaled through that. Another very interesting challenge is the fact that for Africa, we do not have a lot of tailored, what I say AI models, or we do not have a lot of tailored data to build our models on. So I remember back in the day when we were starting our AI model for health insurance, this was like 2019. I probably spent an entire month or two researching the entire web to see if we could find something that could do what we wanted, and it didn't exist. So we had to go the hard way of building it ourselves, ground up. And this is the way it is because like Africa is a very unique part of the world. It's like exists on its own. The rest of the world is going in this direction, going in that direction. Africa is like, we don't agree. We go do it in our mind. That's the way Africa is. The rest of the world has data that you can easily just download and use. Africa doesn't exist. So even if you're trying to find statistics or you're trying to find data that you could use to build your models, it's most likely is not going to exist or it doesn't represent the true picture of what is happening in Africa. So as an African startup, you can't just say, okay, I'm a startup founder, I want to build, this thing that was popular in the day, Uber for X, or, you just want to do copy and paste. Like I had a conversation with some guys, they wanted to build Apple Pay for Africa, and I was like, bro, he said, yes, Apple Pay for Nigeria. I'm like, Apple Pay for Nigeria. Are you really thinking about what you're saying? This is Nigeria where you have to use a PIN, you have to use OTP before you authenticate a payment. And now you're telling people they just tap and they've made payments in Nigeria. So there's a lot of local awareness, like awareness of the environment. Data to support that isn't available. And if you're trying to build AI for Africa or for a Nigerian use case, you have to be prepared to deal with that because trust me, that data is not there. You have to find something to do about it. And one other challenge I would say that could also be important or that we also faced was having to get acceptability. So It's depending on the industry you're in. For instance, we're playing in healthcare slash health insurance, and this is one industry that is gated by our fathers and our grandfathers. They are not tech-savvy people. They are not ready to jump on anything new right away, right? So we had to do a lot of work to allow them to see the value behind what we're saying, and like they can see the value, but they're like, "Are you trying to replace my doctors or replace my nurses with this your AI? No, we don't want." They can see it works, but acceptability to that change becomes another barrier. So, startup founders, you need to have it at the back of your mind that even though you're building something awesome, nobody might want it immediately. Or they might want it internally, but they're not going to give you a yes from your first sale or from your first pitch or from your first, demo. So you need to be ready to press on and keep pressing. Right? I'm sure our investors yes can tell you more about that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess with what you said, we're back to what Olumide said again, which is you're looking at the team. You need to have like a formidable team, right? And then the second is about the data. I was actually going to ask about that because we don't have a data culture here in Nigeria, so it's always very difficult, finding that data. All right, so I'll go back to Olumide again. So he already talked a lot about areas he would focus on: food, energy, jobs. Are there any other significant opportunity areas that you see that AI can play in the next, say, 3 to 5 years in this country, in Africa?
I think Ian touched on the last point that I'm really passionate about, and maybe I can expand more on that. And it's around jobs and how that would how that we can leapfrog and do some interesting things there. And I'll put it in context for you, especially as we talk about AI. In the room today, how many people used the internet by the time they were 10? By the time you were 10 years old, you had started using the internet. I would expect more people here. This is not a young room. Am I in a pension class? Okay, let's say 15. By the time you were 15, you had started using the internet. So there's some people in the room that didn't use the internet by the time they were 15. Okay, by the time you were 20. Thank God. Thank God for Obasanjo. But where I'm getting to with that point is an average CEO of a bank today in Nigeria, if you talk to Iyin or Segun Agbaje, they probably didn't use the internet till they were 32 or 35 for the first time. And if you look at mobile too, in many technologies, folks in the West and in other markets had experienced those technologies way before we started using them. And those were revolutionary technologies: the internet, mobile wave, and so on. What's very interesting about AI is that the guy in Shomolu and the guy in Ikosi are experiencing the same shifts in technology at the same time and have access to the same time as Jason in the Valley does. And that creates some very, very interesting opportunities because the guy in Ikosi or the guy in Ketu's cost is very different. And this is why I'm very, very passionate about what we are building with jobs and AI talent. In fact, I've just backed a company called Dada in the room, trying to scale up data and AI talents, because I think that we can create that workforce, right? In 2050, Nigeria should be about 400 million people, right? Median age of 20. What would these people be doing, right? Who is creating the real jobs and scaling these people up for the future? So for me, it's the key focus, and I think the key opportunity for Africa and Nigeria has to do with jobs and talent. Yes, we can talk about the larger plays around how AI will turn capital into labor. Those things do exist. But I think that people in the room today who are investing in themselves, who are scaling up in themselves. I mean, it's a Saturday morning, and people are here trying to learn and trying to skill themselves up. And I think in the next couple of years, they'll be thankful for the investments they are making in themselves in this field, because Nigeria and even Africa in a whole will be the workforce hub for the future. So thank you guys for investing in yourselves.
Thank you very much. Very, very insightful. All right, so I'll move them again to Iyin. And so I know you talk a lot about, policies and certain things the government should probably be doing or should be looking at, right? So from an AI perspective, what are some of, because the government has actually started some things, right, currently. So from a policy regulatory perspective, what are some things that you think we need to put in place as a country, as a continent?
Well, I'm one of those people that, generally speaking, I'm very wary of placing demands on the government because, like I like to tell my friends, I said, talking to the government is like praying to an idol. Does not hear, cannot talk, cannot do anything for you. So is Oyo, you understand? Um, but I would say I've been very pleasantly surprised at how forward thinking that this government has been, right, in terms of AI. And also in spite of the ignorance of most of the population, actually. It's very visionary to see that the government is actually taking AI very seriously, because normally you wouldn't expect that. And so they've launched the AI collective. Yes, people were complaining about 100 million naira, but I looked at it and I said, which year did all the previous governments even give us, even if they give us 1 million naira, say, at least we'll clap. But they didn't even give us 1 million naira. So, I cannot be complaining about 100 million naira from somebody that has not given me a couple before. You understand what I'm saying? Then, there is there's actually a national policy on AI that seems to have been put together very thoughtfully. But I think the biggest thing that the government needs to consider is actually leveraging AI to transform itself. That's actually, if you ask me what should government do, it should actually leverage AI to transform itself, right? There are so many opportunities for us to be able to do a better job of, ensuring that government, doesn't waste money. I'll use a practical example. One of my very good friends is the CEO of Budget, and it's very clear to me that they've been using AI to figure out where all your lawmakers are stealing money from the budget. Because before, that thing used to be one tome, one maximum page tome, and you couldn't know, you would just see all sorts of random things. I remember one year in 2013 or so, I saw that Wike had put that time I was Minister of Education, around the time I was Minister of Education, he had put classroom blocks for 1 billion naira each. I was like, which classroom block are you building? But these are the kind of things that people, do. You understand what I'm saying? Maybe it's not him, maybe it's the ministry, maybe it's all sorts of people. But I think if government can leverage AI to actually look at those types of things, okay, these projects that we've done, have they actually been done? You can leverage AI to actually send people there, take a picture, do the verification, and use AI to actually map things properly. Even down to serving people, down to tracking criminals, down to making sure most people pay their taxes. So I think there's an opportunity for government to do it. If I was in government, I would be building an AI crack team, right? Basically, that works for government to use AI to fight crime. All these people. I believe that Nigeria will only be safe when we make our peace with being a surveillance society driven by AI, like China is. Where if you commit a crime anywhere in Nigeria, your picture goes on all the databases, and anywhere else we see you, we'll just be grabbing you by the trouser. In terms of protecting our cyberspace as well. All the Yahoo boys that are disgracing our country abroad, how can we make sure that we can surveil them and grab them wherever they are and make sure that we can distinguish between those who are innocent and those who are guilty. So I think that's the biggest thing. But from a policy standpoint, they're doing all the right things, in my opinion. But it's really about them leveraging AI to transform society.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together. And then the last question would go to John. So if you were to start another company today, right? What industry would you target? If you were to use AI now, what industry would that be?
Okay, so the first thing I always like to say is I think of AI as another tool. I don't think of it as the holy grail. So I think the same way we had mobile apps after the invent of the App Store, and then we had Web3, we had crypto, we had the blockchain, and then now we have AI. I see all these things as technological advancements that can be used to solve real life problems, like Iyin rightly said. So I would not start a company for the purpose of starting a company with AI. I will start a company because I've seen a problem and I think AI can actually contribute to solving this problem. That is the only reason I'll decide to start a company or build a product. And if I can think of anything right now, I would say one of them is education. The potential for AI to influence education is really massive because there's a lot, how do I describe it? There's a massive amount of information that can be transferred digitally and reorganized in the way it is presented to the children, to the students. I mean, at all levels of education, for instance. Of course, maybe not tertiary, because then it becomes very interesting. Why should you use AI when you're in the university and all that? But at the lower levels where the fundamentals is what is needed, I think there's a massive room for disruption there. And it's nice that some startups are doing that, but maybe we need more players in that space. Of course, I would say healthcare because I'm a medical doctor, but I don't want to dive into much there because it starts to become very cliche. But I see potential for AI in healthcare as well. And aside what we're doing in Curacao, I definitely still have more projects on my mind, on my to-do list, that I'm going to build for the healthcare industry that are going to be maybe assisted by AI, not necessarily totally AI, but assisted by AI. So I'll keep it at those two for now. Thank you.
Can we put our hands together for them? And so we your hands together again. We've come to the end of the panel session. Thank you very much to our
Thank you.
panelists.